Welcome, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey.
Hello, everyone, on this beautiful Tuesday.
We're broadcasting from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. Unlocking Your Truth is a radio show. It's a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And we are here every Tuesday from 7 to 8 o'clock Pacific time. And every week we talk about something under that general umbrella of metaphysics and spirituality. And
It's always interesting.
Yeah, it's always interesting. And you can catch us live. We live stream a week before the show goes onto the podcast on our Facebook group, which is called Your Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, and also from my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Leslie Phillips' YouTube channel. So,
Yes, yay!
And so tonight I did what I normally do, and I put out a call to our listeners to say, hey, what would you like us to talk about this evening? And it must be a very slow evening because I only got one response. And so thank you, Cara. And that suggestion was to talk about what blocks us from our intuition. Now, we did do a show on that within the last few weeks. And so I thought I'd do something that is in that theme, but maybe just a little bit different than that. And so one of the things we've been doing is actually working our way through the different chapters in my new book, which is called Intuition and Chakras. And there is a chapter in there, and it's about beliefs about intuition. And you know, we create our reality through our beliefs. And sometimes we believe things about intuition that might not necessarily be true. And when we hold a misbelief about our intuition, that misbelief can cause us to block our intuition. So it's under the theme of ways in which we block our intuition. But really just looking at our beliefs and what do we believe about it. So it's going to be interesting to go through some of this and see if we can change people's minds about what they believe about their own intuition.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, and I'll just invite all of our people who are listening live, type in the comments if there are things that you have heard about intuition and psychic development, you're not sure if it's true. And you probably can come up with some intuition myths and beliefs that aren't even in my book. And I would love that because then, we can have fun answering those questions. So I am just going to open my book at different pages in this chapter because there's 22 different misbeliefs, I think 22. And we'll just randomly pick out a few and see what crops up.
22 beliefs, different beliefs?
Yeah, 22.
22.
I think
Wow.
so. 22. I remember writing the chapter. I kind of numbered them. The numbers are not there anymore, but I think it's that many. So one of them, and I've encountered this actually in a couple of people in the last week, and that is, often people believe that you have to wait for your intuition to come to you, that somehow it chooses you. Either a guide chooses you to talk to you, or some opportune moment happens and your intuition drops out of the ethers and makes you aware. So the idea is it's some sort of directed insight that comes from outside of you, and that you can't control it, and that you just have to be receptive and open to be able to receive it when it actually decides to come to you. And there are actually lots of professional psychics, and that's kind of what they believe. And my personal perspective is that's absolutely not the case, and that we can learn to guide and direct our intuition and our psychic abilities. And in fact, that's the way that I do my work. And so, for example, and I always like to use the analogy, You've got your 5 physical senses. And if you decide you want to look at something, you just move your eyes and look at what it is that you want to look, or if you want to listen to something, then you listen more acutely to what's being said. And I think of my psychic abilities in that way, in that I can focus them and direct them and decide what I want to look at and when I want to look at it. And I can also decide what I don't want to listen to and tune it out. And so as you go more deeply into developing your psychic abilities and under the guidance of a really good teacher, you can actually really learn how to access your gift at will and just really decide, what you want to use it for. And so, for example, I know lots of people when their clairaudience, which is their clear hearing, is opening up, it gets annoying because they start hearing all sorts of noises and irritating voices and messages that they'd really rather not listen to, and they think they don't have a choice. They do have a choice. You do have a choice. And it's just a case of, like, you have a radio dial that you need to dial into what you want to listen to and dial out and tune out from what you don't want to listen to. So that's one of the things. And I'd be interested to know if the listeners, if that's something that they believed, that it's just something that has to happen at random. Because I know a lot of people, when they first start realizing they are intuitive and they have psychic abilities, that's the way it happens for them. And that's not to invalidate that that's the way it happens for them. What I'm saying is it can be so much more than that. And how you get it to be so much more than that is through your commitment to yourself and to putting time aside for yourself to develop your abilities.
So what you're saying actually is that intuition, your intuition is always, your psychic abilities are always active. It's just whether you focus on them or not.
That's saying something slightly different than what I was saying, but I can certainly
excuse me.
comment on it.
Well, no, I mean, like, to me, I look at it as like walking around the house or doing something, and all of a sudden you get a feeling, and it just comes, right? And so you listen to it, and it goes. So it's always there. It just comes in. How does it know when you? How do you know when your intuition needs to be noticed? How do you know whether to look there or to hear there?
Okay, so that's what I was talking about. So yes, it's always there. And how do you know when it wants to talk to you? Well, again, that's that projection that it is something that's outside of you. It is a sense that you have, just like you have your eyesight or your hearing. And so you decide. And, if you decide, now I want to tune into it, then the best way I know is through meditation, and actually through some very specific forms of meditation that I teach that activate the psychic abilities. But the general principle is tuning out all of the external noise, quieting the mind and the emotions, and so that you can turn within and attune to those more subtle, non-physical signals, if you like. So I'm going to go on to another one that's just jumping out at me at the page. And this one says, your intuition always makes sense. So who believes that your intuition always makes sense? And what I would say to that is, if you're cleanly and accurately tuning into your intuition, it always gives you good and appropriate guidance for you. It always gives you information that is correct for you. However, it may not always make sense, because when we talk about something making sense, then we're thinking logically. And your intuition isn't necessarily logical. It certainly isn't linear. It's multidimensional, and it is instantaneous. And sometimes you may receive an intuitive insight that you follow, and maybe it makes sense to you, or you understand why you did it afterwards. So it doesn't always compute. What I'm saying is it doesn't always necessarily have to compute within the logical part of the brain. And that's what I mean when I say make sense. So that's another one. Shall we look for a third one in intuition and chakras and see what else jumps out? Let's turn the page. There's a page where it's got two on them actually, and the idea is it's only special people have intuition, or women are better than intuition. That's two. Women are better at intuition than men. So that's two different beliefs that say some people have it and some people don't. It's my belief that everybody has it. So there's not special people that are the ones that have psychic abilities. And a lot of practicing psychics would have you believe that, it runs in my family. My mother, my grandmother, we were all at this line of psychics. And I think in that case, what's happening is because they believe in it, they are not blocking it within their progeny, within their children, and they're encouraging it. And that's why in that family, everybody is psychic. They believe in it, they encourage it, they practice it. Most families don't, and therefore it gets shut down. Because if you're having some form of psychic ability where you see something that nobody else can see, then your parents are going to say, oh, it's your imagination, you're just imagining it, or he's going to grow out of it. And so it doesn't get encouraged, and therefore we don't realize that we have it. But everyone does. And the way I like to think about your psychic abilities is that they are basically how we communicate as spirit. So in the non-corporeal form, as energy beings, we don't necessarily use language. We communicate through vibration and light. So sound and light, vibration, and light. And there you have it. That's psychic abilities to transmit and receive those kinds of signals. Your clairvoyance, you're dealing with light and the structure of energy as light, and your clairaudience, for example, you're dealing with, more vibrational, for example. So we all have it. It's who we are. It's how we communicate our spirit. We don't all manage to bring it into the body and activate it through the body and use it through the body. And some of us don't want to, and that's not part of our life path. So it's perfectly fine to be a person who has no interest in psychic abilities and is fully going into the physical, and that's what they care about. What I'm saying is it's not that they don't have psychic abilities, that they do, but it can be a choice whether to bring them forward. So everyone has psychic abilities and can develop them and can tune into them. And it is to some degree programming in our culture that determines who exhibits that sense or who doesn't. And the same thing for this idea that it is something that women have more than men. And I've actually heard some authority figures in the area of spirituality state that that's the case. And again, I personally don't believe that. I do believe that we have programming in our culture that makes certain types of intuition more acceptable in a man and other types of intuition more acceptable in a woman. And
that's something I've often believed, that women are more involved in the psychic because it's more touchy-feely in a way,
we have permission to be that way. And we have embedded in our culture beliefs that say a woman's intuition or, you know, the mother has eyes in the back of her head. It's a mother's intuition. And so that there is permission for us to be intuitive, and for the men, there are certain ways that there's permission. You know, you can be a businessman with a gut feeling. You can be a CEO who's a visionary CEO. You can be good at finding directions when you're driving around. And all of those can be different traits and aspects of the intuitive senses that men have permission for. And so I've known plenty of male psychics who, you know, were very good. And but it does attract more women than men. And I think that's sort of like kind of like a fact. It's sort of like 80% women and 20% men in terms of people who are drawn to it. And maybe we, you know, part of that relates to when we talk about attending courses and things like that, it relates to perhaps preferred learning ability, how they learn. Anyway, I'm getting the signal that we should wrap up and go to a break right now. So I'm going to stop talking about this for a few minutes, and we're going to play some advertisements.
Advertisement. And we're back.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And today we're talking about intuition. And I am just picking out a few little passages from one of the chapters in my book, Intuition and Chakras. One of the chapters relates to, it's sort of like things that we believe about being psychic that aren't necessarily correct, common beliefs. And before the break, we were talking about, you know, this idea that some people are better than others. And I just think it's an innate sense within all of us. And not everybody cultivates it. Not everybody chooses it. Not everybody has the support from their family and culture, but we do all have it. Let's find another one. This is one of my favorites because this is one of the main things that I teach about. And maybe okay. So there's kind of a belief that says that certain chakras are responsible for intuition. So, for example, that the third eye, which is the sixth chakra, the brow chakra, is the one that is responsible for intuition. And boy, it's very powerful when it comes to your intuition. That's the center that relates to your clairvoyance and abstract intuition. But actually, all of the chakras, because my book's called Intuition and Chakras, every single one of your chakras channels psychic abilities, and the type of psychic ability that is channeled through the different chakras is obviously different depending on that energy center. So the third eye is super important in developing your psychic abilities. And one of the main reasons for that is because when you learn to operate from your third eye, it gives you neutrality, clarity, and puts you in a place where you are non-judgmental. So it allows you to see what you see without reacting to it, without judging it, but just in a very neutral fashion. Here's the information. This is what it is. So it is a great place to anchor in and cement and begin as some of the very first things that you focus on. But it is not the only way of receiving intuitive information. So, for example, let's use another common one, people who are empathic and who feel other people's emotions and who get overwhelmed in an emotional sense, can't be in a crowd. That's not clairvoyance, and that's not the sixth chakra. That is clairsentience, and it is being channeled through the second chakra, the emotional center. And so the chakra system is this amazing energy system that you can journey through and explore and experience different aspects of yourself, including different ways of receiving intuitive information. And that's one of the things that this book goes into in great depth, is what kind of psychic ability is channeled through what chakra, for example. All right, and I do want to invite, we definitely, at least in the third part of the show, are going to answer listeners' questions. And if any of the listeners have anything they want to say or ask about when it comes to beliefs that you have about being psychic, and you want to ask, well, I've always thought this, is that right? But I'm not sure, is that right? Please type it in and Corey will read it out to me, and we can have a discussion about it.
I think everybody's just enthralled by your
it's a very quiet
show.
Yeah, nobody was chatting on the chat either. Yeah, all right.
Everybody seems to be very.
It's like I'm reading your story from a storybook.
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen it this quiet.
No. So then here's another. I've opened the next page, and this has got a couple of good ones on. One of them is, in order to be psychic or awakened, you must open all your chakras. And to be really spiritual and on your spiritual journey, you just have to open all your chakras really, really wide. It's not true. It's not true. It's more about understanding what information is stored and channeled through each chakra, and what experience of reality do you want to have. If you opened up all of your chakras, then what would happen was that you would be overwhelmed by multiple streams of information, both from physical reality and from spiritual reality, if you open them all and sat with them all really wide open. And so, for example, if we want to tune into the spirit world, we don't necessarily need the chakras that relate more to the physical world to be wide open. That would be a distraction, for example. And so to develop your psychic abilities, or to be a spiritual master, is about mastering the chakra system and kind of understanding what you get as a result of how you consciously manipulate and arrange your chakras. So when I go into trance to do a reading, I deliberately close some of the chakras, not completely, but tune them down. And I deliberately open some of the chakras. And so it's a dynamic system, and you can learn to have dominion over it so that you can get the experiences that you're after, you know. And an example comes up actually right now. Everyone on the planet's really frightened, aren't they? They're really, really frightened. And so sometimes what happens when we're frightened is we either open our first chakra wider because we want our survival information, and that's the energy center that contains our survival instinct. Or we open our crown chakra really wide because we're going, help, give me some information that makes sense. And either of those things can actually be more discombobulating because, you know, you may be overwhelming yourself with information that isn't relevant for you right here, right now, for example. So those are just a couple of examples as to why we don't necessarily all the time want to have all of our chakras wide open. Another one that's on the same page as that.
You're going to go through them all, I think.
Well, I probably not, but another one that's on the same page as that is we're taught that chakras are particular colors, and they kind of go through the rainbow spectrum from red to violet. So your first chakra's red, your second one's orange, your third one's yellow, your fourth one's green, your fifth one's blue, your sixth one's indigo, and your crown chakra's violet. And that's, you know, I always believed that that was a Hindu teaching, and I discovered actually when I was writing my book that that belief came in only about 100 years ago through the Theosophists. So Madame Blavatsky, who was like a famous psychic about 100 years ago, or the late 1800s, they channeled in that information. It's kind of very interesting. It actually didn't come from the Hindu understanding, but it seems to be very widely adopted and accepted right now. And one of the things that I think that's good is it illustrates the shift in vibrational frequency as you change from one chakra to another. So the one that is closest to earth plane reality, it has a lower vibrational rate. It needs to, because it is relating to the physical world, the world of dense physical matter, which has a lower vibratory rate. And then as we move up through the chakra system, the vibratory rate is increasing all the way up to the crown chakra, where it's the highest one, because it is connecting, it helps you connect to source energy, to your soul, to your higher self, which are all high vibrational energy aspects. And so the idea that it follows through that rainbow gives you that idea that these are different vibrations, because what is color? Color's a vibration. But what I would say is to my clairvoyant vision and to some of my peers and associates who I know follow similar ways of reading that I do, to our clairvoyant vision, any chakra can be any color, and they change all the time because you are processing your experiences through the energy center, and you are channeling your information through the energy center. So let's use an example. Let's say today you run a marathon. So maybe you do run like a red life force energy through your first chakra because you need your life force energy, you're running a marathon. Then let's say you twist your ankle in the marathon, and tomorrow you're laid up with your leg in the air, focusing on healing yourself. Maybe you run a healing blue through your first chakra while you are healing yourself. And so then if I or someone else does a reading on you, your first chakra is not going to look red necessarily. And that doesn't mean it's something wrong with it. It just means that it's that color frequency is giving you information about what you are going through at this moment in time. All right.
The colors are interesting, as you say. Like that thing about just coming through the, I never can remember her,
Blavatsky.
That's interesting, because all the images that you see, almost all the images you see online of the chakras and their colors, all sort of like they pertain to.
Yes. And where are we getting it from? Our Western culture. It's our Western culture.
Yeah.
Fiction and interpretation of the Eastern culture, isn't
They
it?
They've put those two together and are sort of have developed something different. But yeah, it's very interesting, and we all walk around with this belief that is just not quite true.
Yeah, and so that's why it is so important to develop your own psychic abilities, because then you will see for yourself what you see for yourself, and then you can have your own unique perspective. And that would be, actually, that's one that's not in my book. I don't think that's one that's in my book anyway, which might be another belief or myth that we can bust, which is to say there is one truth. Yeah. There is one truth. And
I want my chakras to be striped.
If you develop, make them striped. If you develop your psychic abilities, you will see the one truth. And the truth is, there's not one truth. So, because, and let's explain it this way, we are all unique individuals, unique aspects of divine consciousness. Ultimately, the oneness, divine consciousness as a whole, which is infinite, contains all realities, and therefore we could say that's the only being, if it is a being, if you want to think of it, that has ultimate truth of everything. But each of us is a pinched off aspect of that greater oneness, and therefore we have a unique perspective. So you can it's quite within your perspective if you would like to believe something different than me, you know, for example. And so, you know, and let's also think of it this way. I think a good analogy for describing this is, yes, we're all completely different, and we've all got our own filter that we look at the world through. An analogy is, let's say that there's an office building and there's 20 floors in the office building, and there's some crime that happens across the street, and various people in the office building happen to be looking out the window. Each one of those people will have a different version of the truth of what happened in that robbery or whatever that happened across the street. And so Johnny on the 25th floor, who's looking down from this perspective, will see it one way, and Tony, who's in the basement just peering out through the little window there, he will see it in another way, and Sally halfway up the building also, you know. And so they're just unique perspectives on the same situation. And that's why sometimes you could get a psychic reading from either a lineup of psychic readers, you know, maybe 3 of us all sitting here, all looking at the same question, and each one of us could bring forward a slightly different perspective on your situation. And none of them would be wrong. They would just be other unique perspectives giving you information on what's going on in your reality.
Interesting.
And that's why we always say, of course, take what rings true for you and what feels right for you. Don't automatically allow yourself to be programmed by somebody else and what they say. And what better way for you to know what's right for you is by developing your own intuition, by developing your own psychic abilities. Because then you can see for yourself, know for yourself, and hear for yourself.
Interesting. Very interesting. Dr. Leslie, you sure you don't have comments turned off?
So there's no comments at all?
No, we have one. Well, yeah. mine are up there as well, but someone said thank you. And we've got some thumbs up and some hearts, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any in our YouTube channel either, actually.
No, I don't see anything. Well, it's time for another break.
Okay. Well, you're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and we broadcast every Tuesday on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley in BC, and we live stream on the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, my YouTube channel, and we also post the podcast on drlesliephillips.com.
Okay.
Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. And today we had a request. Somebody wanted us to talk about what blocks us from accessing our intuition. And as we did another show a few weeks ago where we went through specifically what blocks you, I just thought I'd take a slightly different angle on it today, which is to say, sometimes what we believe about something blocks us. So what are some beliefs that limit us when it comes to our psychic abilities? And I was just dipping into one chapter in my book, which is my Intuition and Chakras book, which is coming at the launch date for that's the 8th of April, but it's available for pre-purchase. And if you pre-purchase it, I give you another book that's got
Oh
a
boy.
bunch of psychic quizzes in it. So that's cool.
So far we've got what you've covered is that you have to wait for it, your psychic, your intuition, that it always has to make sense, which is not true. And you also said only special people get it. And
These are
another
things
one,
that I said were not, that I
yeah,
didn't
we're
believe.
not. Yeah. And another fallacy that you had is that women are better at it than men. I like that one.
Yeah.
And that certain chakras are responsible for your intuition is another one that you said. And
That's
another
true.
one, yeah, you must open all your chakras.
Right.
Uh,
Which
yeah,
I,
which is not true.
yeah.
And that chakras are specific different colors for specific things. They're always the same, which is not true.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment on the chakra thing that I found interesting that I didn't realize, that the colors are almost not as important as the density of the color.
The quality of the vibration, yes. So what you're looking for is how fast is the energy moving? Does it look clear? Is the vibration high? Or is the energy murky, muddy, gray, cloudy, slow moving, blocked? Because if it's blocked and moving slowly, that could be indicative of something like, for example, if you have a disease, if you have an illness or some sickness in your body, then there's going to be an energy block behind that, for example. Yeah, so
Oh,
healthy
sorry.
aura, the energy is moving and flowing and bright and clear.
Yeah. Also, there's, I can't remember what I read about it, but black and white auras. Black or white auras.
I don't know what you read about that either.
You're psychic, come on.
Well, and I'll just talk from my own perspective that sometimes when I see black in somebody's energy field, often for me, that is showing me their pain, their emotional pain, their sadness. And so often if I'm picking up on like a dense emotion like that stored in somebody's body, then it will look black. But I wouldn't say that black always has to be bad. Sometimes black it's like could be the color of the void and something incubating and waiting to be born, for example. So that's the other thing. You know, you can probably, I've seen them, you can buy a book that's will tell you how to read an aura. If it's green, it means this. If it's yellow, it means that. and I would say that, again, that's another myth, because there is not one system that you can go, that's linear. That's the human brain that wants to put things in categories and say, well, if it's red, it's always this. If it's pink, it's always that. And what I would say is, if you observe that color frequency from your 6th chakra, you can translate it into the meaning that it has in that particular circumstance, in that particular person at that particular time. And so one color doesn't always mean one thing. And so, I mean, that's about, you know, learning to read and interpret the colors. It's something that happens intuitively by using your psychic senses, and it is not done by, although I'm sure many people do, by having a book that instructs you. Remember, every time you see green, to tell the person this is what it means. So you have to be, rather than learning it from a book and passing it through your intellectual mind, seeing it directly, interpreting it directly. All right.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting, as they say.
Oh,
Um,
white. You said white.
yes, white as well. I was just going to mention that.
So sometimes, oftentimes, when I'm, from my perspective again, when somebody's afraid, it's often a white. It's like this thick white, stuck white energy. But conversely, it could be some reflection of a sense of purity or peace. So again, it's not always the same thing. It just depends on the uh, the individual and what's going on with them. So if there are no questions, I'll choose another one from my book. This is a good one. Spirits have emotions. Spirits don't have emotions. Emotions are human. They come from the body, and they are your body's way of giving you feedback about how it's experiencing its reality. Well, I'm having fun. I feel really happy. Or I'm really afraid, or oh, I'm really sad right now. That's your body talking to you. The emotions are a communication from your body. But we will often project onto our spirit guides or a deceased relative emotions, like I quite often have the odd client who will say something like, well, I think my guides are angry with me, or I don't think that they're very pleased with me, and that your spirit guides love you and are neutral and accepting of you, and they never judge you, right? So if you're believing that a spirit guide is having an emotion in response to something that you did, other than just loving you and appreciating you, then that's your projection. And I would say the same thing for a deceased relative. I mean, people always want to know, how is this deceased person doing? Or how is my deceased pet doing? And the answer is they're always absolutely fine. They don't have a body anymore. They're not in the density of this planet anymore. And so, we might worry that I don't know, the last thing that happened between somebody that passed and somebody that passed away is we had an argument, and are they still harboring anger against me? No. So forgive yourself and move on, really. And so spirits don't have emotions in the same way that humans have emotions. So when we believe they do, we're just projecting the human the human experience onto something that is not human right now, in the same way that we are. They don't have a human body, which is the where the emotions are coming from. Am I going to have to pick another one, Corey? Do we have any questions?
No, we have no questions. Natasha did put the link for your book and on the comment, and she was responding to Callie. So apparently they're online, but for some reason I don't think we're able to get their comments.
Well, yeah. So please do go ahead and pre-order the book, and then let me know, because then I have some extra goodies to send you. And because of the situation with the coronavirus, all of my plans to go out and do book signings and physical events are cancelled. And so I'm having to come up with some online events to celebrate the book. So I'm thinking about having an online book launch.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I think it might be a bunch of us sitting around on Zoom with our own glass of wine or something, and just talking about the book. And so, so watch out for that. You're all invited to that if and when I do it, and I think I'll do something like that. All right. So maybe I'll just open a page at random in the whole book and not just that chapter we were working on. Shall
Oh,
I?
I still have, I have questions.
Oh, that's good. Ask away.
Yeah, I'm back to chakras again, and like I asked about the black and the white. What about silver and gold?
They're extremely high vibrations. So gold is the vibration of what we call the Christ force energy, Christ consciousness, the energy of love, acceptance. And so Christ consciousness is an awakened consciousness. And if any of you attended the World Healing Meditation that I did a few weeks ago, and it is posted on the Facebook group and the YouTube channel and the website, we worked with 4 different frequencies in that meditation, and they were ones that were given to me that were helpful as antibacterial frequencies. One of them was rose pink, which is a vibration of love, acceptance, affinity, oneness. The other was gold, which is Christ consciousness, which is the vibration of love, and also love, oneness, compassion, interconnectedness. And then we had silver and platinum, which were higher vibrations again. And they're getting closer to sort of like a God force vibration. So they're all in that range of really powerful, healing, high vibration frequencies, gold and silver and platinum. And they are, you know, for some people, you probably have to get used to working with and using those vibrations. Not everybody is at that vibration and able to run them. It's something that as you meditate for a while and you work with different cosmic frequencies, the body gets used to the higher vibrations coming in. I mean, that's another thing that, we should talk about really, which is why do we need to raise our vibration, when we're developing our psychic abilities? Because those energies that we're wanting to access are high vibration emotions. So we need to reduce the vibrational gap between us sitting here in our bodies and those higher vibration emotions. But we need to get the body used to running them.
So a whole bunch of comments just came up. And let's start from the top. I don't know if we'll be able to get to everybody. Sorry about that, folks. But for some reason on our system, the comments did not come up. I just
Maybe
clicked.
Facebook held them back and
I don't know.
them into the thing.
So we got a comment from Loretta Ann. You mentioned guides can communicate the other day. I clearly heard in my mind's eye ear a voice asking if I wanted their help. I disregarded it because I don't know who it was. How do you find out what these communications are about and who is communicating?
So it's a great question. And of course, as you focus on developing your psychic abilities, you get to see and know that for yourself. But in the meantime, a very quick little way is to ask them if they are serving the light and the highest and greatest good, and ask them over and over again, at least 3 times. And if they're still around, then the answer is yes. And if they're not still around, then the answer is no. So that's one way that you can be secure in who you're talking to, that at least it's a being that is representing the light. And I would say once your clairvoyance opens up, you can see them, you can see their vibrational frequency. So you can, it's easier to know in that case. So I hope that helps. It gives you something that's usable now.
Sounds great. Let's get to the next one. From Bridie, just tuned in, but I think I know what you just finished saying, and very relatable at the moment. Adam, you said one time something along the lines of spirit is easy. I found that it's not a clear, easy message, or if the guidance I receive when manipulating energy is some way is not easy, then it's not spirit.
Yeah. If you're trying and using effort and struggling, you are attempting to do the work of spirit through the body. and because the body uses effort, but spirit is instantaneous and there is no effort.
Yeah, true. Okay, Bridie again. Oh, sorry. Bridie again, totally blanked out all my growth, understanding, and tools that I've developed with being an empath in the last few weeks. Went into a really unhealthy space, and I totally forgot everything I'd learned about understanding what happens for me. Was like when it clicked back on. Adam says, I believe that. Natasha, when I take a colloidal silver or colloidal gold, my abilities increase. Why is that? How else do these metals affect the body and consciousness?
That's a really good question, and I'd like to look at that. That's a very good question. And anecdotally, I know a couple of people who have had some bad effects from taking colloidal silver. And so, again, I don't think there's always one thing that is always going to do as good, but let me go into trance and take a look. So this person feels when they take colloidal silver that it's enhancing their psychic abilities. And the question is, why is that? And are they asking, are there other things that they can take that would do that for them?
No, just that.
Do you know the first name of the person?
Yes. Didn't I just say that?
I've forgotten though.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me go back up because I'm just reading through them. Natasha.
Okay. It just looks to me that in the taking of the colloidal silver, you're giving yourself permission to match that higher frequency. So you could be at that high frequency without the colloidal silver, but it's giving you permission somehow to be at that higher frequency. And that it's the higher frequency that's then helping you tune in better.
Okay, so we're almost to the end of the show. There's a couple more good questions, and let me get one for you that if you could answer really quickly. What's the first step in developing my intuition, from Karen?
Learn how to ground.
Very important, yes. One of Leslie's favorites.
Learn how to ground. Again, if you buy this book, there is a whole chapter on grounding. And there is a reader's gift from me, which is a series of a little meditation course. So you get some instruction on grounding. But we do have podcasts where we teach grounding. But grounding is very, very important, the very first step, the most important step. And just because I would just say, just because if somebody learned grounding years ago and tick the box and say, oh, I know grounding, I'm on to other things, that's not the case. You need to always be grounded when you are activating, accessing your intuitive abilities. Okay,
Natasha says, just ordered your new book, Intuition and Chakras. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, Natasha. And folks, we're going to have to go. Sorry about that. I don't know what I've never seen that happen before. But if it can happen, it happens to us.
I just sat here and talked to you the whole time.
That was wonderful. And you got some good, I've copied the comments down as well. And there's one here. Finding the show extremely knowledgeable and filled with lots of helpful guiding direction. This is from Tim.
Hey, so
thanks, Tim. Buy the book, Tim. Buy the book.
Because that's full of knowledge.
Shameless.
I know, shameless plugging. But it is like I poured my heart and soul into this book. It's densely packed with the same kind of stuff that I witter on about in this show. Okay, folks. Good night to all. Night. You've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and we'll see you next Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time. And we're off. Well, thank you, folks.